We're grateful for who God is. That list of names given, holy and mighty and all of that, that's just the beginning of things. When Jesus was jousting with the Pharisees, Jesus made it clear to them that when you start talking about me, you're talking about something that surpasses Abraham. Because before Abraham was, he said, my name is I am. In other words, when you open up the book to look at all of the good things that a person can possibly be, mighty and triumphant and awesome and holy, he says that that's just the beginning of it. He had to close the book.
Am I American? I'm Joseph Cherry. Some people know me as Lincoln Black, but I'm a young Black man from High Point, North Carolina. 46 years old, 46 years young. Started out in, I guess I was born in High Point, North Carolina. It was a small town right outside of Greensboro, Winston-Salem. It's about 70 miles outside of Charlotte. As a youth, I'll say I had a relatively stable life. I was raised by my grandmother mostly. My mom had me when she was 15 years old. My mom was never fully capacitated mentally. She had some mental health issues. So I was raised by my grandmother. Just her. My grandmother I come from a family of lawbreakers, a family of criminals. My grandmother ran a liquor house for as long as I can remember. So in society eyes, I came from a, air quote, broken home. But as a youth, there was nothing broken that I seen about it. You know, I was loved, I was clothed, I was fed. It just was, I didn't come up seeing the typical love-based family setting. And at the time, I didn't know how much damage it was doing or just how bad it could lead me to become. Because what it did was show me at an early age how to bend the rules or break the rules to get what I wanted out of life. And coming up, like my siblings, like I have 2 younger brothers and a younger sister by my mom. However, being raised by my grandmother, I wasn't raised with my siblings. My siblings were taken out of the house due to what was going on in our household. You know what I'm saying? So, that happened. My siblings were taken. I was probably about 11 or 12. And instead of going willingly to where help would have been, I felt like I could make it on my own. So I went out on my own. And as you can imagine, any type of correctional facility out there, I've been through. I've lived through. From your group homes, your juvenile detention centers, your juvenile training facilities, youth prisons, foster care. I am a walking product of what the system made. However, what a lot of people don't tell us as young people coming up, the system itself is not built to rehabilitate us. It's up to us ourselves to rehabilitate us. The system will allow us any type of field and the opportunity to do so, but it's still up to us to rehabilitate ourselves. And as a youth, man, I just was rebellious. As I said, my grandmother passed away when I was 14. And after my grandmother passed, I felt like I had no one to answer to. And we wasn't a very religious family. And I remember, it's funny, we lived right across the street from a church. But my grandmother never allowed me to go to church, never allowed me to go out of the yard. So I used to get up early Sunday mornings and just sit on the curb and listen to the people in church sing music. And it's funny how that little stuff like that will stay with you. Because with that little bit of God experience that I had as a youth, I feel like it's what kept me to make it to adulthood. In that system, man, from foster care, and I've had some great foster parents and great parents in the group homes that genuinely wanted the best for me. But after losing my grandmother at that young age, I answered to absolutely no one. It was what I wanted, when I wanted, and how I wanted to get it. And the only way I knew was the way that I grew up watching every form of criminal that came into it. And as a youth, in and out of prison, it just taught me more and more about doing crime and being careful. Like in my teenage years, man, like I didn't go to prison for being a drug dealer. I was a hustler. If it could be sold for money, I would sell it. I don't care if it was crack cocaine, a lawnmower, baby clothes, it could be meat from the grocery store. If it could bring me income, I would sell it. However, that wasn't my only hustle. Selling things off for cash. I would rob, I would steal. If I didn't have no money to go get something to hustle with, then I would wait until the dope boys finished selling what they had to sell, and that's where I ate from. I would eat off them. I was the Omar in the hood before Omar was on the wire. And just coming up in that, man, I've suffered, child molestation as a child, coming up through the system. Being a victim and being a perpetrator at the same time. And it showed me that even though I was broken, I was not defeated. Because it was actually in prison to where I actually had a face-to-face collision with the God I serve. And I'll get into that part a little later, but coming up in the system can harden a person beyond measure. And what I mean by that is, inside of the institutions in our system in America, you're gonna have people that only looks out for themselves. And that's what prison gonna teach you. In order to survive, you have to maintain yourself. And all through those institutions, I never felt like that. I felt brotherhood more so in the system than I did when I was out on the streets. I made more family connections inside that were healthy in my eyes than I had more family connections that was healthy on the streets. Like my mom has 3 sisters, 2 brothers. And after my grandmother passed, my mom herself would bounce between households, between some of her sisters, or she would go with some of her aunts and uncles just to live with. So I never really had a mother in my household. I never really grew up with my mom. And that gave me all sorts of issues. Never knew my father, never growing up with my mom. And after my grandmother passed and I was not in the system, it was from one household to another. And I always felt like I was the one in the way. My little cousins, they couldn't get what they wanted or what they deserved because their mom had to look out for me too. So they harbored some resentment for me there. And it was just always tough, feeling like the outside guy, even with the ones you love the most. But, glory be to God, it taught me a lesson that sometimes the family you need in your life are not blood relatives. And that was important because it taught me how to open up and trust. And I had to learn how to apply that to my actual blood relatives because I realized I didn't really have a full understanding of true family, what it meant, or to have true support. I never really knew what that meant outside of what I learned in the system. And coming up, man, it's just, I always had my perception of a man from TV. And I had to learn that the men on TV are written characters. And there's a point in our life to where we have to decide if we want to be the written character or if we want to be the author of who we are as men. And that's just a glimpse of who I am in a nutshell from a youth. And it was tough, but glory be to God, he gave me the strength to endure and to learn from the troubles of my youth that built the platform of who I would become as a man. Who I am, America. I'm Joseph Cherry. Before I was talking about my youth and my adolescence, and now I'm gonna bring you into where I am today. I've been free now for almost 10 years. I was released from federal prison at FCC Butler Complex here in North Carolina. I was released from there on December the 10th, 2011. After doing 13 years, 4 months, and 16 days to the day. Now, remind you, I told you earlier that I was 46. I mentioned I've seen every system or form thereof of correction that we have here in North Carolina. I spent a total of 23 years and 8 months incarcerated in the system at some point in time. That's over half of my life. However, in my stint during my federal sentence, I met a man by the name of Curtis McCray. Right now, he's my best friend. And it's funny that I was a career criminal, and now my best friend is an actual warden at one of the federal prisons now in Petersburg, Virginia. And it was strange because in prison, you don't want to be known as the guy who always talks to the officers or always in the officer's face. But it was something about this officer, man, that he wouldn't let me just do my time. Because now in the federal prison, they had all sorts of sports programs. There's college programs you could go to and enroll yourself. All I wanted to do was play basketball and play music. He asked me one day, how much time are you willing to give God after you get out of here? And I told him, man, I give him however much he wants. Not realizing that God wanted all of my time. It was because of Mr. McCray that I gave my life over to God. And it's tough to live right and follow Christ out here on the streets. It's so much easier in prison because your time is structured and you live in an actual Groundhog Day. You're doing your same routine every day, day in and day out. And I didn't realize after my release how difficult it would be to walk with Christ. However, once I changed my life over, it made me want to see others do better than I did, not for my own good, but just so God might get glory from the life I was leading. I spent so much time in my youth destroying the neighborhoods that I stayed in. I personally feel like the plight that our youth are in today, with the senseless killings, reckless gun violence, I contributed so much to that attitude that these young men have now. When they looked up to me when I was selling drugs and out there shooting guns in the air, and just living recklessly, I gave them something to aspire to, something that I don't even believe in now. And it's something that we as a people have lost in raising our youth. A lot of guys my age now won't even say that to a guy walking by and just openly disrespecting the elderly. Won't even correct them out of fear of what might transpire because these young guys today are so hot-headed. Tupac said probably 20 years ago, man, that black men 35 and older in the year 2020 would be voiceless. There would be no men in the street screaming about the injustice that we ourselves are bringing upon them. And tragically, he's almost right. I mean, you have a few guys that's in the hood that's, preaching change, preaching revolution, preaching things other than crime. But it's lost on our youth ears because somewhere along the line, we lost a connection. You know what I'm saying? Our fears have divided us. Like, I go into any neighborhood here in Durham, North Carolina, man, and I'll walk by myself. Me and my pastor get out and walk. Just walk the neighborhoods and talk to people, man. And I have no fear with anything that might come. If I was to walk out and die today, I would be good with my life because my life belongs to Christ. And for Christ I live, and to him I shall die as well. It took me to hit the streets. Well, let me back up. When I was first released, I was living in Charlotte. And I was home on federal probation. I was terrified to go outside because I didn't want to put myself back into the same neighborhoods that I was in, destroying it. I wanted to keep myself out of it because I didn't want myself to fall back in. But now I realize I have to put myself right back on the same blocks that I used to hustle on, the same blocks I used to rob on. These are the blocks that I need to be out there showing people that the things I used to do has led me here to tell y'all there's better ways. And I've talked to, there's one guy named Rashawn Maxey. When I first got locked up in federal prison, he was 3. When I came home, he was almost 17. And he was running the block. He was literally the man on the block. And when I came home and seen him, he was the first young guy that I told him, I'm sorry I led you down the wrong road. Right now, he no longer sells drugs. He's a prominent leader in his church. And he leads young men in his neighborhood. And it's because he saw me come home and change and said, I don't want to take the path he's on, but I want to be on the road he's on now. And that's what it's about now, man. It's not about me or the mistakes I made in life, it's not about the progress that I've made, because God has brought me a long, long way. I have more material things now than I did when I was a hustler, when I was at the peak of my game in the streets. I had all the money that I wanted. I had cars, houses, jewelry, and none of it gave me any consolation. But now that I've worked for it, bled for it, and it's taken me time to acquire it, I appreciate it more. It means more now. Now it's actually in my name. It wasn't always an easy journey. And it's never gonna be. As long as we hear, there's always gonna be a struggle. There's always gonna be a fight in front of us. But we gotta realize I can punch all day and my arms gonna get tired. But if I fight by thinking first, I may not ever have to swing a punch. So it's all about building up the youth now. You know, I walk around, I tell a lot of the young guys I see who they walk around flying colors, assuming that this is the family that they need. And that's the same thing that I was under the assumption of, that in prison, this was the family that I needed. I didn't really need my family outside. But if someone will send you down a road knowing that certain death awaits you, that's not a family member you need. It's up to us to build up the strength within each other, the confidence within each other, and the bravado that we can stand in front of a person and tell them, sir, ma'am, you're wrong, and I want to help you to change it. I mean, there's always gonna be pushback on change, because 9 times out of 10, people are comfortable in the lane they find themselves in. But if we as a people are going to move forward, if we as a people want equality on a grand stage, then it's up to us as Black men to set the foundation for our youth to stand on. And we can't lead them down just any road. We got to show them the right roads to be on. Education is key. And so many of our young kids are dropping out, not finishing, getting kicked out. That high school to prison pipeline for us as Black kids is alive and well. You got teachers out there that want you to do well, that want to teach you, but then you have teachers out there that will allow you to sit in the back of the class, whether you take notes, not pass or not. That no child left behind is going to push you through the grades without you having the proper knowledge that is needed. You have to apply yourself, and that's our job, to ensure we as a people apply ourselves in all levels: education, health and safety, healthy eating, our lifestyle in itself. It's up to us to put the word out there and talk to these kids to get them on the path that I find myself on now. And it's enlightening, man. It's enlightening. Who I am, America? I'm a young Black man, broken, but not destroyed. 46 years old, I'm here in Durham, North Carolina. I'm now the deacon of Impact Church of Durham. I serve up under Pastor Derek W. Horton and Lady Keisha Horton. And it is an honor and a privilege to be a tool in the hand of my community. And I thank Mr. Jerry for this opportunity, man. I greatly appreciate it. To David Benton, salute to you, my brother. Keep pushing beyond the fence, and I as well will push it on my end.
Shall be my shield and defense. Jesus be my shield and defense. Shield and defense. shall not come nigh to me. Holy Spirit outside and inside of me. Sheltered up in the most high I become.
Cause my residence is the Father.
I've made my dwelling place here.
Under the Almighty.
For God is my refuge.
And my fortress.
I've made my dwelling place here.
Under the Almighty.
For God is my refuge.
And my fortress.
So I will say like Jacob, oh awesome is this place. This is the Lord's house, and there's nothing that could come against his gates. So draw your weapons, but you won't be able to defeat his saints. Cause we hidden in the
Secret place.
wrapped up in because we
Seek his face.
so they shall not come nigh to me. Holy Spirit outside and inside of me. Oh, sheltered up in the most high of me.
Cause my residence is the Father.
Residence is the
Cause my
Father.
residence is the Father.
Residence is the
Cause my
Father.
residence is the Father.
I've made my dwelling place here.
Under the Almighty.
For God is my refuge.
And
My refuge, yes. I've made my dwelling place here.
Under the Almighty.
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 I've made my dwelling place here.
Under the Almighty.
For God is my refuge and my fortress, yeah. I've made my dwelling place here.
Under the Almighty.
You are my strength and fortress. You are my strength and fortress.
You are my fortress.
Yeah,
You are my fortress.
you
You
are.
are my fortress. Strength and my fortress.
You
You
are.
are my fortress.
Yeah,
You are my fortress.
you are. For God is my refuge.
And my fortress.
We're grateful for who God is. That list of names given, holy and mighty and all of that, that's just the beginning of things. When Jesus was jousting with the Pharisees,